What's going on, guys? It's Turin here, and I'm here with another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this particular battle, I'm going to be playing the Greenskins, and I'm also going to be partnered with Black Iron, who will be playing the Greenskins as well. So I'm going to be using Wurzog, and he is going to be using Grimgor. So a little bit of diversity there, definitely a good time. We're going to be facing off against Onion Knees and John Ton, who are both going to be playing the Empire. Definitely going to be a nice thematic matchup, and I feel like this starting position up here is just so much better than what the Empire has to deal with. I mean, just this initial high ground, you can if you were playing a faction that had gunpowder or something, you could obviously deploy up in this high ground and just have such an advantage. But anyways, I digress. Let's get right into the army composition. So as far as my army, I decided to go with a very savage build. Seems to kind of be the way to go with the Greenskins, because if you get Savage Orcs with their 30% physical resistance, they're pretty darn good. And Empire, for the most part, has very lightly armored infantry. They're going to have spears or halberds or flagellants, and Savage Orcs will pretty much dominate all of those units. So if you mix in with some Savage Orcs and just get some Black Orcs in case he brings Greatswords, I feel like your infantry line is going to be pretty, pretty strong in that matchup. And of course, you got to bring Big Papa Wurzog. So he is definitely, in my opinion, the most competitive Greenskin Lord. Effigy of Deget is very, very good for dealing with flying harass and lords coming in like that. Granted, it is a little bit buggy. It seems like a lot of flying lords, even when you effigy them on the ground, they simply take off in the air, which definitely really unfortunate. But still, I think it is a great tool. On top of that, the best item he has, honestly, well, not the best, but a very, very good tool is the Bonewood Staff. So whenever you cast a spell, it gives your entire army map-wide 16 melee attack and a pretty substantial charge bonus. So what a powerful tool. So we do have the Foot of GORK. There we go. Fists of GORK, which, again, Fists of GORK isn't as good. I think, did it get nerfed recently? I can't remember. I feel like it used to be an AoE spell. But anyways, it's pretty cheap on Winds of Magic, and if you cast it, it will trigger that melee attack. So it's pretty good to have a low-cost spell simply to just trigger that. So, aside from that, just Savage Orcs. I do have Goblin Big Bosses, to Rusty Arrows, and some Night Goblin Archers. Of course, as always, I do keep the Nasty Skulkers right behind my Night Goblins and my Rusty Arrows, just to kind of use that Smoke Bomb if, the Flying Lords, especially against Empire, come in there. It really allows you to snare them by 76%, and then, give them the punishment after that. So that's pretty much it for my army. I do have the Hammer of GORK as well, and you can see that Black Iron over here has a pretty similar army. He decided to bring more traditional Orc Biggins, which of course are pretty good. They do have that 50 base armor, so a little bit more well-rounded, I suppose. But still, the Savage Orcs for their cost seem to be pretty darn good, and fulfill a somewhat similar role. Granted, the Orc Biggins, they do have a bit of an anti-large bonus. If you go ahead and look, they have a bonus versus large of 8, which is quite good. But Savage Orc Biggins do, I also believe they do. Yeah, so anyways, he does have a mixture of those and Black Orcs, which is kind of more of the old school Greenskin army, and again, it's very effective. He does have Warlords of Boys, and they do have Armor Sundering, so they're pretty good. They do have the stock mechanic, so if you keep them in the back line and you're able to surround an enemy lord, these guys can actually do some serious work in kind of lowering their armor and then allowing your Goblin Archers and other units to do, pretty good for you. So he does, of course, have Big Papa Grimgor. He's got an Orc Shaman with Foot of GORK. Definitely would not be a complete Greenskins game without that. And, of course, he does have a pretty heavy Cav Force, much stronger than mine. So he does have some two Orc Boar Boy Biggins, as well as 2 Goblin Big Bosses. So that's pretty much it for our army. Let's look at the Empire. So the Empire does have Boris Todbringer here and a second Boris Todbringer over there. Again, Boris is probably the most competitive Empire Lord. He does have that regeneration, which is just so powerful and definitely allows you to kind of use other Lords of Magic without having to worry about healing. Because, again, if you do bring Karl, he can be, get bursted pretty hard, and taking that much damage on your Lord early is very rough. But with Boris, you can be a little bit more relaxed and kind of more aggressive with your playstyle. So also, guys, I forgot to mention we do have the Morgreves Magi Marauders, who are quite good for focusing down, well, not focusing down, but, harassing enemy flying lords who are armored. So aside from that, the Empire player does have some Spearmen and Flagellants. He also does have the Silver Bullets hidden over here. So these guys are so strong, and the stock ability is really good because one of the weaknesses of handgunners in general is, they're somewhat vulnerable in terms of positioning, but obviously if you have a stock, you can get them in an ideal position and do some pretty good work. So aside from that, he does have a front line of Sigmar's Sons, Flagellants, Greatswords, a pretty dynamic roster. So if they're able to get the Greatswords fighting against, the Black Orcs, and maybe the Flagellants will perform well against the Savage Orcs. I think Savage Orcs will still win in a straight-up engagement, but Sigmar's Sons will do pretty well there as well. They do have the 30 armor, which is, better than 0, obviously, and they have great stats with 43 melee attack and 43 melee defense as well. So, aside from that, he does have a Light Wizard. Looks like he has Nets of Amnatok and a few other augment abilities. He does have the Hammer of the Witches back here with some spears protecting it, some additional greatswords in the back line. So mostly, pretty similar armies from both of them, but they do have also Zintler's Reichsguard over here, who do have the Vanguard deployment, but very, very good versus infantry with a big charge bonus and pretty good combat stats. But it looks like Black Iron is able to sneak some Goblin Wolf Riders around the back as well, so I did miss those early, but pretty cool army. They do have a Jade Wizard as well as a Light Wizard, so they can do a little bit of cross healing if need be. and I think we're ready to go. So let's have some fun. Hopefully you guys enjoy this game, and you guys can see it's getting off to a quick start. So I actually didn't see the silver bullets here, so I was like, hey, I can get some free harass on some of these units over here, but unfortunately the silver bullets were not having any of that. But he does come in with Boris Todbringer, but look at that one volley on Boris from the Mangy Marauders. They're able to do some really, really good damage with their armor-piercing missiles, and they take a little bit of damage, and you can also see the Hammer of the Witches definitely putting them in a can. So our Goblin Wolf Riders are able to sneak by, and I feel like they kind of were like camouflaged with this map, so they're going to get in here and actually take out this very, very expensive Hammer of the Witches, like right out of the gates into the Spearmen over here, just chilling, kind of cheering, not really mindful of what's going on here. But this is a devastating loss to take this early in the game. So pretty wild stuff there. But the Silver Bullets did a pretty good job fending off our Mangy Marauders, and it looks like the Savage Orcs are going to charge down the hill, and the Black Orcs and Biggins over here are also going to engage on this flank. So we have a pretty scary infantry court for sure, but they do have a lot of good ranged units. They do have the Sterling's Revenge here. They have the Silver Bullets. I always call them the Magic Bullets. I don't know. I always get that confused. But losing that Hammer of the Witches early was very, very rough for them, and it's going to make it a much tougher game because, again, that's like, what, a 1,200 investment there? But the Goblin Wolf Riders in the back are now getting gunned down and handled, so they're definitely paying the price for their transgressions. So it looks like there is a net coming down here. It's definitely going to be pretty rough, but it just catches that one group of Black Orcs, which isn't that big of a deal. If I had caught those Savage Orcs, that would have been pretty good. But the Savage Orcs, obviously not going to do well against Greatswords. I'd actually be interested to see how they like perform in a straight-up matchup. So they do some decent shock damage, and the Greatswords didn't get a great countercharge there, but still the Greatswords will obviously beat them just because of that armor. But still, they're not going to do terribly. So here, this is the fun battle to watch. Seeing just Flagellants and Savage Orcs, just the battle of the shirtless bros going on down here. Definitely a pretty wild fight, to say the least. So pretty cool. I like kind of that they're fighting in this burnt down forest here. Pretty awesome stuff. So over here, some of the Savage Orcs are getting savaged by the Silver Bullets who do magic damage, so their physical resistance isn't going to mean anything there. So very, very tough stuff. And you can see the nets very, very well played here, allowing the Sterling's Revenge to shoot. And my guys were coming down the slope, so he's not going to have any issues with angling there. But still, the Rusty Arrows and some of my other units doing a very good job kind of poking down the Flagellants. And the Savage Orcs with Ere We Go are really, really doing solid for me here. So he does decide to land his Boris Todbringer here. So the Savage, or the Orc Boy Biggins, get in there. They get a great surround, and they're just going to absolutely lay a spanking on Boris right now. So again, Effigy of Deget is such a good ability, and you can see I also do use the Fist of GORK right here, which gives me massive combat stats, the weapon damage, everything I could be looking for, and he is snared. He is taking a huge beating, but the Effigy of Deget should wear off in a moment, and he may be able to get away. It's going to be very, very dicey. So you can see I even run the Nasty Skulkers in there, and I'm probably going to use the Smoke Bomb. There you go. So I kind of waited for the Effigy to wear off, and then I Smoke Bombed him just to make sure he wouldn't get away, but still, he somehow does get away. I feel like these Griffins are extremely good at just pushing through things. So as far as the other side of the battle, it's going pretty well. The Black Orcs over here are just doing some serious work. It looks like there's some Demogryph Knights and some other troops kind of blobbed up on Grimgor, but you can see that Black Iron. It looks like he's casting an overcasted Foot of GORK here. So again, I know this is one of your guys' favorite things on the channel, so just look at the HP, just devastation. It crushes those Spearmen, takes about half of those Demogryph Knights, their HP down, and Grimgor is, he's totally fine. He's chill with that. So definitely GORK is on his side. They're having a good time, and they're able to rout off the Zentler's Reichsguard, and they got taken down to 11 models, just absolutely devastating. That was obviously one of the turning of the tides here, but Grimgor continuing to tank these guys like a boss. In the front line, you can see the Black Orcs and the Orc Shaman. They're doing pretty good, out-trading a lot of these guys, and he is keeping these Orc Boy Biggins in auxiliary. It looks like they may come down the hill here to help out the Shaman, and they do indeed. Over here, you have the Orc Biggins. Obviously, the Greatswords will out-trade them, but they put up a pretty good fight, considering they do have 42 weapon strength. So, after that, I would have said initially that the Empire player was doing pretty well, but, having lost those, he was and is playing extremely well, but as far as kind of just the balance of power in that battle, I would say he was in an advantageous situation until he lost those Cav. Because now that Grimgor is, he's relatively free, he was surrounded, he was probably going to go down relatively soon, but now that, all that happened, it's going to be a much different battle. So over here on my side, it's a pretty wild cockfight, to say the least. My Black Orcs and it looks like my melee line was actually able to kind of win for the most part. The Black Orcs are getting in there, but he's doing a really good job with Sterling's Revenge, just kind of sitting in the pocket, keeping them fighting, and they do have good melee stats with 28 weapon strength and 35 melee defense, but they're gunning down Warzog, actually, kind of capping him, forcing him to run away, so he has to scurry up the hill on his pig. Very, very tough stuff. So out here on the outside, I was able to actually catch some of the Silver Bullets over here with the Goblin Big Bosses and the Orc Boars. Finally, because these guys were just doing absolute work. And though they only have 48 kills, they did some substantial damage to some of my heroic units and other guys like that. And you can see that Boris Todbringer is just on the hunt, kind of chasing down Warzog, because if I do lose Warzog, he might be able to pull this one out. He's definitely being very, very aggressive here. I do use a magic missile effect, which does trigger melee attack, and I do use Effigy of Deget. So this is I used the effigy, and look, it's just gone. I have no idea what happened there, but I used the effigy, and maybe it's because Wurzog broke. That might be part of it. I think it probably was, but still, Boris is able to get pushed off the battlefield. He has about 200 HP. He's still regenerating though, so if he didn't have that regeneration, he'd definitely be dead. But maybe effigy breaks when your lord gets routed, or breaks or something. I'm not sure. You guys will have to let me know in the comments below. But as far as my troops go, it's going pretty well. We're able to come in and finally catch up with the Sterling's Revenge with my mobile, with my cav. They're getting in there and going ham on their boars. Definitely enjoying the bacon over here. And over in the front line, you know, what's left of my nasty skulkers, my black orcs are definitely going to have no problem cleaning up these spearmen. Pretty good fight though. I mean, it's very, very close over here. So over here on the other side of things, you can see the other Boris Todbringer has also been routed, but he does have some handgunners back here applying some good pressure. So these orc biggins are taking quite a bit of damage, you know, from the missile fire, but still they just were able to kind of outdo the Empire infantry line. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact that the Empire player had the Zintler's Reichsguard, he had Demogryph Knights, and also he had like a group or two of spears there. The spears got annihilated. The Zintler's Reichsguard pretty much had like 80% of their, you know, their numbers taken out, and the Demogryph Knights also got put down. They lost about half their HP. And I think if the Empire player had those cav to continue to help out in this fight and, you know, go after some of the high value units, it could have been a very, very, you know, close fight for sure. But still, that Foot of GORK, it's just such a powerful ability. It can definitely, I mean, it's a swing and a miss because again, you're investing a massive amount of Winds of Magic, but if it does pay off, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So right here, guys, it looks like Boris is putting up a good fight, kind of a bit of a last stand, and it also looks like this Boris Todbringer is indeed coming back. So there's still 2 minutes left in the game, and you can see this group of Tattersouls, I think they actually were chasing something, so very, very unfortunate, but they are coming back to the battle, and we still have to work through 120 of them. And, you know, for the most part, we have, you know, 34 Black Orcs here, 35 here, and honestly, with their armor, they should be able to deal with the Tattersouls no problem. And the Morgrub's Mangy Marauders are very, very good at dealing with flying armored lords. They're fast. They're faster than flying lords for the most part. I mean, Boris has 90 speed. These guys actually have 92 speed, so they can kite them, and you know, they're able to shatter him over there, which is quite nice. Over here in the main battle, it doesn't look like there's much left, but guys, there's actually a moment in this game, and it's the main reason I wanted to cast this game. We actually played against Onionies and John Ton in about 5 or 6 games, and I think they beat us in almost all of them except this one. So, you know, but this game has a very, very good moment that I want you guys to see. So right now you can see that these Tattersouls are kind of sitting up here, laying a smackdown on this Hammer crew, chasing them off. Definitely, they're shirtless, they're wild, they're pissed off that they kind of missed out on the main battle, but still, they're getting in there and doing some pretty good work. So you guys will see in just a moment, though, there's a very, very amazing moment here. So there's an Orc Shaman here, and then Wurzog's also over here. So if you guys probably have an inkling, if it's in one of my games, it's probably a Foot of GORK. So right now, what we end up doing is we actually use Effigy of the Git. So we snare them, and then Black Iron and I were like, hey, let's double Foot of GORK them. So I actually used Foot of GORK, and then he cast it a second later, so we get the double tap. So there's the 1 Foot of GORK, and then a second boot is going to come down in just a moment. And so yeah, the double GORK action, if you guys can see, and here comes the second stomp. So he's just stomping all over these flagellants, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've seen in the game. It didn't do a ton of damage because the first Foot of GORK actually pushed them out and kind of cleared them, but the double stomp, the double tap stomp was pretty cool, and that was pretty much it. So I'll just fast forward the rest of this while we take out these guys, but hopefully you guys enjoyed these casts. Very well played, Onionies, John Ton, and Black Iron. It was super fun. Yeah, like I mentioned, we played them. We were just like queuing up for some games and having some fun, and we ran into them like 4 or 5 times. I think it was 4 or 5. I can't remember, but yeah, they did pretty well. You guys obviously saw the Beastmen game where they beat us, but I mean, some of those other games, I'll try and cast them as well. There were some close, good games, but they definitely laid the smackdown. So very well played to both of them. So yeah, let's go check it out. Savage Orcs, obviously MVPs, so incredibly strong, but the Black Orcs also did well, because Savage Orcs they're kind of like a Swiss Army knife against Empire Infantry. Like, they'll do so well against all of them, and even for their cost, they'll do okay against Greatswords, simply because, you know, they have that physical resist. Now, Greatswords will crush them, but still, they can hold the line for some time and allow your Black Orcs to really perform as they did. The Morgrub's Mangy Marauders, huge fan of those, but obviously you guys saw how effective Effigy of the Git was. I was able to kind of lock down the Boris Todbringer and, you know, kind of rout him off early, which really kind of gave me a big cushion in that fight. But Onionies definitely had some good micro with the Silver Bullets, and the Sterling's Revenge brought a really, really cool army there. And wait, oh, okay, so those were actually Onionies' troops over there, I think. But I was fighting against, yes, his troops. So his cav were actually helping out in the other fight, which now, you know, explains a lot. Because again, by sending those over there, he was a little bit undermanned in fighting me, because this is over 3,000 resources he was using to help his ally, and unfortunately it didn't. You know, they got literally stomped. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff there. For Black Iron's troops, you know, the Biggins performed well. The Black Orcs did pretty well for him. So I know he usually likes to bring this to 8 peak loonies into Warlords Boys. So it's always pretty fun to see those guys in action. But, you know, very cool stuff from everyone. And I think one of the big determining factors is with the fact that we were able to kill the Hammer of the Witches. If that thing had been online and it had been like shooting at our lords or our cav or anything like that, it would have been a very tough, a much tougher fight. It already was a tough fight. So very well played to John Ton, Onion Knees, and Black Iron. Looking forward to playing some more 2v2s, guys, and we'll see you all around. Have an excellent night and take care.